Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to CSR. This is Attorney Sarah Sugita and standing in for Mr. Larry Bruhard in tonight's episode of CSR right here on GNN. We're talking super branding with our guest, President and CEO of Super Brands, Mr. Harry Tambuadco. Welcome back to the show again.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yes, before we took a break, we were discussing political dynasties, personal branding, and also how branding in politics is very different from branding in products, goods, and services. And how the worst and best case scenarios will play out if we allow monopolies in certain positions.
Well,
or in certain
dynasty will not serve the people, will not serve democracy. But
that is why it's unconstitutional.
but the marketing principles, the objectives, and the basic principles of branding all remain the same on both. The difference is with marketing, products and services, you really promote profit. Profit is the ideal goal. Insatiable appetite is part of the package that is sometimes or most of the time required. Applying it to politics, it's branding, imaging of the person, making them win. That's the profit angle supposed to be. But the problem is it's a violation of the Constitution, and it's intrinsically against our freedoms, our democracies. It's the antithesis, as Pagia put it last Monday, the antithesis of our freedoms to represent ourselves in government. Parang ganun lumalabas.
Because our democracy, our democratic system now is a representative government.
Supposed to be.
We elect somebody to talk for us,
yes,
in the sphere of government affairs. So these are the senators, the president, the mayors, etc.
But what happens is when the families called dynasties come in,
they hold the monopoly over
yes,
public
parang monarchy
office.
sila, pero hindi
Yes.
naman.
And I would think that maybe entering public office is a profitable venture. Because why else would they bother going back into the same positions or, campaigning again, running again always for office, not passing it on to any other leaders that they
Well,
would
it's
have developed?
It's obviously very profitable.
Yes, it's obviously profitable. Is that why you're also going into public office?
Oh, no.
hopefully?
I'm glad you brought that up because I always like to put that out on TV when I can. No, I'm running for public office only for one single purpose. I'm so critical in my TV shows when it comes to my analysis or when I bring up the issues of the current events that involve many politicians. It's so easy to criticize. Know what it's like when you're sitting there. And this is a lot of the people I've met on TV and a lot of my guests over the years. I mean, subukan mo. Ang dali mag-criticize. Ikaw nga maging congressman, ikaw maging governor, ikaw maging councilor. Tama nga naman eh. And now I'm going to try it.
You have to go through the process, I guess, to know what it's like on the other side of the fence. Because as you said, it's so easy to criticize. But what is it like if you are the person?
But for me to make it a career, I do not think so. I'm in there, I have a specific plan. I came up with a platform I think Muntinlupa requires and needs at this point, and it has not been addressed for the last 9 years, 10, 12 years. And that's addressing or making priorities, putting your priorities towards Laguna de Bay. Kasi ang flooding dyan, pataas ng pataas na. We can no longer stop. Hindi na natin kaya yung floodwaters coming down from the higher plains.
Meaning pataas ng pataas, meaning the water that comes in every year, the floodwaters.
Sobra na. Because
the volume
the lake has become shallow because of silting. A lot of erosion, land erosion, kasi it's a catch basin from the mountains coming down. Ideally, it empties out through the Pasig River.
Right.
But the Pasig River also has the same problem. It's getting shallower. Now, dredging is one solution, but it has to be continuous dredging, and you can't put what you dredge in the same area. Obviously, useless lang yun. You have to dredge and throw it out totally. You've got to make it deeper so it begins to catch. But at the rate the waters are coming down, the flooding, you see, if it's one thing we have to understand, don't be a fool. Don't try to stop Mother Nature. Nature's wrath is gargantuan when it comes down. It's a force no one can equal to say, stop, I can hold the waters there. Look at Thailand.
I'm quite concerned. How many people die every year on the average?
I would imagine. Do we need more than one? If one person dies, is that worth the 100 billion, 1 billion, whatever the cost of the project? Because either way, we don't do it today, we're going to do it in 10 years. If we're not going to do it in 10 years, we're going to do it in 20 years. You know why? Because the flood water is going to keep creeping up and it's going to eat up all the residential areas that are already on the bay and the perimeter and so on as you go along. Right now, it eats up maybe a good 30, 40 meters in.
So it's going to be a permanent problem
Yes.
unless we do something about the flooding in Laguna
Yes,
Divide.
it's already permanent. The scientists have already declared it. We all know it. The people who live around it already understand. Talagang, basta rainy season, ingat na tayo. Talagang malulunod tayo dito.
Yeah, I understand that the government plans to build a ring dike to, in Parañaque
Yes.
and neighboring areas in order to address the solution. As a resident of Muntinlupa, what do you think
Yeah,
of
well, the
this
president
solution?
brought that out in one of his talks, in one of his forums. And I think the idea, which also
Is
I
that a
think,
good idea?
well,
Is
it
that a good
passed through
solution?
NEDA already, if I'm not mistaken. I'm not going to contest the engineers who know what they're doing, supposedly. But the ring dike solution is temporal. We need a permanent solution. You don't want to put Band-Aid into a wound that is gaping and getting bigger. You know, hindi pwede. It's like a patient who has a diabetes. Once he starts to bleed, this will continue to bleed and it won't heal itself.
What are the permanent factors to be considered about
Spillway.
Laguna de Bay? No, I mean,
Spillway.
what will always be constant in Laguna de Bay? The siltation, the
Yes, the
soil
siltation
erosion?
coming from the
What will
mountains.
be coming?
The
What will
long-term
be
solution is to
permanent?
plant trees in the mountains.
Long-term
Long
solution.
term. We have to do that simultaneously. We plant trees while we dredge, and then while we create a spillway.
The dredge means you clean out.
You
the
clean out as
silt,
well.
yeah,
Because soon, the lake is going to be gone. Siyempre, puro lupa yan. Bagsak ng bagsak ang lupa. Bumababa sa Laguna de Bay. Pasyalo ng pasyalo yung tubig. Maya-maya, wala nang natural lake dyan. And you know, Laguna de Bay is a treasure because yun lang, that's one lake you can live in front of and not be scared of tsunamis, big boats ramming into your yard because lakas ng hangin, the boats are going to come in and take you, you know. It's a beautiful water resource. You see, if you go down the lake to the other end, Caliraya is on a higher plane, and that's a water reservoir. That also collects its waters from the mountains. Pag nag-over na yung, nag-spillage na yung Caliraya, if you drive towards Pagsangan, makikita mo yung spillway, may tube dun, yung malaki, pababa. That's what we need in Laguna de Bay.
So you will have a tube that carries
Yes.
the excess water or
You
flood
have
water
to. It was a
out
plan
of,
introduced by
out of
architect
Laguna de Bay.
Palafox in the mid-70s to no less Ferdinand Marcos, who agreed, and all the engineers agreed with him. It was supposed to be the shortest distance between the two, between Manila Bay and Laguna de Bay, which is through Sucat, or now called A. de los Santos Avenue. Ideally, that's the best and shortest route. But nag-residential na yan, marami ng tao doon. But you see, so what? If you need it, you're going to have to do it. If
and you have to do it fast.
Yeah.
The government has to do.
If you
has
don't
to
do
act
it now,
fast
you're
on
going to
this
do
one.
it in 10 years. You're going to do it in 20 years. The difference is it's just going to cost more billions.
You were likening the situation to Bangkok when they
Yes.
suffered
In
massive
Bangkok,
flooding
ang
last
solution
year.
ng Bangkok is the dikes that you mentioned.
I
The
see.
ring dikes that they're planning na and then they want to increase the road para taasan yung kalye para hindi mabaha ang kalye. Bakit ka tumatago sa solusyon? Ang solusyon dyan, i-divert mo yung tubig. Hindi yung dumadating yung tubig, palalim ng palalim, taasan natin yung kalye, taasan natin ang kalye, taasan natin. Di, pataas lang yan eh. Forever na kayo, may 10 feet high na yung kalye. It's gonna be higher than the skyway, and doon ka na sa taas. Ang problema ng highway, pag nasa highway ka, maayos ka. Eh kung doon ka nakatira sa tabi, hindi ka na sa highway nakatira. Hindi mo naman pwede lahat tataasan mo eh. And the
Yes,
ring dikes,
definitely.
the ring dikes is to slow it down. Yun lang naman, to slow down the amount of waters that come down abruptly, supposed to be. But why even spend on a temporal solution? Go towards what it requires. How many more people have to die? Ilan pa dapat mapinsala dyan? Alam mo, ang dami. Ang problema, hindi yan ang pinag-uusapan eh. Pero dito may namamatay taon-taon-taon. Every year. Muntinlupa is perched right, we have a certain portion of the bay that we enjoy. And we have a number of barangays facing that water. Kawawa naman yung mga tao nakatira din dyan. Now, there is a solution. This is one reason I want to go in. I'm going to project this. I was asked the question, why do you need to be a congressman para gawin mo yan? Because government will not pay for this project. Simply
They will
because...
need huge appropriations.
Yes,
would
and
imagine.
I don't blame the government. The national government is,
Very expensive.
unahin muna natin yung mga nagugutom at katatayo ng kung ano dyan. Unahin natin yung mga ibang proyekto, mga ibang infrastructure, paggawa tayo ng more plants, electric plants, or whatever. Tama nga naman eh. They have their priorities. but there are solutions which I wish to introduce should I come in. And part of that has to need some type of representation from the people and some type of association to gather more muscle by getting an association of congressmen whose areas, districts also share the bay, the beauty, the boundary, the bounty of the bay, the beauty and the bounty of that bay. Now, there is a solution. At the same time, we can build that spillway and spare government from that big infrastructure expense. We have to do it anyway, so we might as well start now. Why do we wait for one more death? Is 10 billion enough? Is 100 billion enough pag isa pa mamatay next year? Or by the end of this year? What kung 200 billion yan, 300 billion? Pero kung isa pa mamatay yan, is the 300 billion worth that? Sasabihin mo, kung walang pera yung tao na yun, baliwala yan. Kung namatay dyan si Sobel, yung may-ari, mayaman, o si Henry C., o mga anak niya, silang natamaan dyan. Is it worth that one life? The answer should be the same for all. No one's higher, no one's lower. Basta Pilipino at napinsala dyan at may namatay, hey, it's worth that immediately. Let's do it now. That's responsibility. And that's branding. That's delivery. That's being consistent with what you're doing. That's why I want to run for Manila. That's all. Because they're not attending to it. If you notice in Congress, they've never brought it up. It only comes up every year when there's flooding.
Yeah, when there are casualties.
Pag
diba?
lumalabas na sa news, may namatay na naman. Padala ulit tayo ng pagkain dyan. Hingi
and
na naman
that's
tayo.
a band-aid solution.
And then call everybody.
It's not proper accountability.
Donation. Bigyan natin lahat sila. Napipinsala at mga tao dyan. Wow.
Yeah, relief goods will never solve
Of course
the problem of flooding.
It's like the CCT. Pinakain mo, bukas gutom na naman yan. Everyday gutom yan. Ano yan, pakainin mo, bumbuhay na? Hindi kaya mas maganda turuan mo, give them the opportunity of work to make money on themselves, livelihood, para may sustainability. Let them produce something, whatever. That's where you put your brains to work. The ability to deliver products, diba, with consistency, to generate an integrity, just make sure may sustaining yan. So they themselves and the country itself can become a brand to service the people.
Definitely. And on the road to campaigning for 2013, are there difficulties?
Lahat humihingi ng pera.
I would think that is that a social responsibility. I mean, for any politician, anyone who's running for office, anyone
the social responsibility, I believe, and I firmly stand, and I'm passionate about, all politicians, those with mandates already and those vying for a mandate, those running in an election to get a mandate from the people, your social responsibility should be not to buy the votes. Why? Because, alam mo, pag gumastos ka ng piso, or ako may mga nakakausap ako mga barangay kapitan na I close my eyes. Araw-araw, humihingi yung taong bayan ng pera sa kanila para mga Pinoy nandoon, nakanganga, humihingi na lang. Bibigyan mo ngayon. Pag binigyan mo, alam mo, ang tawag dyan, yung syndrome na yan, ang tawag dyan, Robin Hood. Robin Hood is a fictional character in England who stood up to his government, his monarchy, and said, to hell with the king, maling ginagawa mo, I'm gonna steal from the rich and give it to the poor. Maganda. Ang problema dito,
it's not sustainable.
It's not.
Solution.
Yeah, which he wasn't. Eventually, he had to go down. But noble yung cause niya. He wanted to get the wealth of the rich, which was being absurdly manifested on one side, and that's uneven distribution. Pero ang Robin Hood of today, hindi. Ang Robin Hood natin ngayon sa mga politiko, bibigyan mo ang pera, yung taong bayan, saan mo ngayon kukunin yan? Sasabihin nila sa'yo, hindi, mahal ko yung taong bayan. Sino loko po? Buti sana kung 100,000 lang yan. You're talking millions. So ginagawa niya, nanakawin niya sa gobyerno. But you see, ang gobyerno, ang appropriations ng gobyerno, galing din sa taong bayan yan eh. They belong. So you're stealing money from the poor to give to the poor. In the meantime, you're making a percentage in between.
Yeah, I believe Christian Monsod, who was former COMELEC chairman, said that vote buying will be the bigger problem of future elections. Simply,
which is what's happening now.
Yeah, simply because that's how you get elected into power.
No, hang on. I also have my problems with Smartmatic and Picos.
No, I mean, going back to vote buying, that's how you influence.
It's our biggest cancer right now.
To choose a certain candidate or choose a certain leader, and then for that leader to get his profit, his investment back once he or she is elected into office. And that is illegal, not I mean, aside from all the evils involved, it's also illegal because it violates the sanctity of the ballot. You don't really have free expression of your choice in the ballot if you are being influenced by the fact that you are tied to a certain candidate. You have a consideration because you got paid or you were given a sack of rice. It ties you down and limits your choice of leadership. So definitely vote buying is going to be the bigger problem of our
It
succeeding
already
elections.
is. It's the biggest.
It already is.
It already is. And it's
And-
just getting more. Alam mo, this morning I was in Congress. I met with someone in the bureaucracy. And I happened to mention, hey, I'm throwing my hat in the ring. Susubukan ko, why not? Sabi ko. Alam mo, unang sagot sa akin, Sir, laki investment mo dyan. Marami ka palang pera. Sabi ko, pare, ba't naman kailangan na maraming pera? Wala naman nananalo, hindi ka maglalabas ng million. Saan ka? Munting lupa? May na dyan 50 million. Walang nananalo dyan, hindi naglalabas. Sabi ko, di kawawa pala yung taong munting lupa. Talaga naman kawawa ang Pilipino. So, I'm
There's
thinking in my mind. Defeatist
Yes,
eh. Alam ko na mali. I'm part of the mali. Gagawin ko pa rin yung mali. Iko-corrupt ko yung politician ko. Yung politician ko, iko-corrupt din ako. Alam mo, nangyayari dyan? Talo ang taong bayan. Ang panalo dyan yung oligarch.
Yes, I think it's something that it's an endless cycle that it's not necessarily endless. That's what I think. That's why we have elections. Otherwise, let's just have a monarchy and then we all worship the king or the queen.
Yeah, but
right?
who are we going to make a monarch?
Yes, but
Estradas? The
that's
Cayetanos?
why. Yes, that's why
The
we are.
Binais?
That's why we are in a democratic society. It means voters have that one day of power in their hands in choosing their leaders in the elections.
I think democracy is most sensitive to what I call rule of law, if only we abide by our Constitution and not violate it, which is what we tend to do, and most of the legals today are doing it, and politicians. They tend to skirt the Constitution, which I think we should hold sacred and abide with, because this is the only thing that will keep us civil. As far as social responsibility is concerned, it is up to those with the mandates, our leaders, to think of the greater good, the majority of for the good of the majority. The only way you can do that, the restrictions, what should regulate you and what should guide you should be the Constitution, not to go around it. And that's what we've been doing. And people have been getting away with it. It's called rule of law. I'm not saying the judiciary is we authorize the judiciary. No. On the contrary, they're also the bigger problem as well. But if we could only fix our system, the ability to give the people redress. If I want to complain, I can complain. Don't charge me with libel because I'm complaining. I have to complain because I want to correct the system. I'm seeing something wrong with the system. Ganun dapat.
And I'm using the system in order to address
Correct.
my grievances.
Yes, to address my grievances. Social responsibility is something that should be more with leaders than with those being led. The social responsibility should be very heavy. It should be passionate inside the hearts of our leaders. Kung mahal talaga nila yung taong bayan, this is what they will do. Obviously, they do not.
Yeah, put others ahead of yourself or your
But
family's
isn't that what we
interest.
see? With their big cars, big houses, their flights abroad, their luxurious lifestyles. Titignan mo yung pamilya niya, wala namang industriya yan, wala namang, ano ba yan, maraming lupain ba yan? I mean, was that a rich family of past? Hindi naman eh. Yumaman na lang sa gobyerno. Ginawang karera yung gobyerno. Mali naman yan.
Well, I'd like to call attention one last thing to the Philippine Internet Freedom Alliance, which I'm also a part of. It's PIFA. Well, we're having a General Assembly this Saturday, October 20, in Matahimik Street in Diliman, Quezon City. If you'd like to learn more about the RA 10175 and the cyber libel provision, you can go to www.pifa.ph and learn more about internet freedom, what's going to happen the next 120 days that we're waiting for our senators, our congressmen to correct this law, or make an amendment, a repeal, what's going to happen, what should we do next, and how are we supposed to regulate internet freedom. So more of that on pifa.ph. So I just wanted to say that. How about you? What's your stand on should the internet be regulated in the first place?
I think we should have legislators who understand what they legislate and before they sign it.
Yeah,
That's all I
was
ask.
gonna say that.
Yun lang eh. Sana
legislators
pinag-aralan
read.
nila,
Yes.
binasa nila, bago pumirma.
That's
tas
social
lalabas.
responsibility. As
Oo,
you said, that's
exactly.
a responsibility on their end, not
Kila-
our end.
Kailan na sila lumalabas sa Facebook, sinasabi nila kung ano, kanya-kanyang bigayan na ng rason eh. Atrasan na eh. Kasi ang publiko galit na eh.
I think in times like those, the first thing you do is you admit you're wrong.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's one thing in branding, incidentally.
Yes.
There's a very big
There's a
story with
crisis.
Tylenol, no less. Bayer, no, was it Bayer? It was Johnson & Johnson's. It was in 1992, if I'm not mistaken. Na lagyan ng cyanide or poison some disgruntled employee. Kasi mga tubes nila noon, yung mga medicine nila, yung soft tube lang.
Many people died.
Oh, marami namatay. Alam mo ginawa nila? They stopped their advertising, their budgets. They came out, apologized publicly, admit your mistake, correct it. Lie low and fix the problem. And they attended to all the consequences that came across.
That is the ethical thing
Yes.
to do. And I hope our telecommunications companies also do that. Maybe we'll tackle that next week.
Yeah.
So
Kasi
thank you
look
very
what happened to
Yes.
Johnson & Johnson's. They're up again. They're number 1 again.
You have to apologize. if
Yan
you did
ang
something
branding.
wrong. You have to apologize if you did something wrong. Admit it if you did something wrong. So, senators and also ladies and gentlemen who tuned in to CSR, thank you for joining us. See you again next week right here on GNN with Mr. Larry Bruhart.